In today's video, you'll learn something that can really help you. So like it and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Let's get started.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that all the money in your bank account has simply disappeared. It wasn't hacked. It wasn't stolen. It simply ceased to exist because someone, somewhere, decided that those numbers on the screen are no longer worth anything. Sounds impossible. It has already happened. Many times. In different countries, different eras, different systems. And it can happen again. Because the money you use today is not real. It never was. For 5,000 years, humanity used something completely different. Something you could hold, weigh, feel the cold of metal in the palm of your hand. Something that survived fallen empires, civilizations that turned to dust, wars that redrew continents. That something was silver. And it was not just money. It was pure, tangible, indestructible power. But then something changed. In recent decades, deliberately, you were taught to forget silver, to trust colorful pieces of paper, then digital numbers, to believe that money can be created out of nothing, without backing, without limits, without consequences. And while you believe this, your purchasing power was silently drained, like sand slipping through your fingers. The question no one wants you to ask is simple. Why? Why was a system that worked for millennia abandoned in a matter of decades? Why do governments and central banks hate so much the idea of real money? Money they cannot print, manipulate, or control. The answer will make you furious. Because it wasn't an accident. It was a choice, and you paid the price. It all begins almost 3,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. There, among rivers, temples, and mud brick palaces, something revolutionary was born. The idea that value could be measured, standardized, trusted. Before that, trade was chaotic. You exchanged wheat for goats, fabric for pottery, labor for food. But how could you know if you were being cheated? How could you trust that that sack of grain was really worth 3 chickens? The solution came in the form of shining metal, silver. It did not rot. It could be divided without losing value. It was rare enough to be valuable, but abundant enough to circulate. And, most importantly, it could be weighed. A piece of silver weighing 10 grams was worth the same anywhere. It didn't matter whether you were in a remote village or at the center of an empire. Weight did not lie. Around 2800 BC, silver became the official standard. Mesopotamian temples began to weigh and record transactions in silver. Taxes were collected in silver. Legal contracts specified payments in silver. The famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest written laws in history, already stipulated fines and compensations in silver. If you killed someone's slave, you had to pay 20 shekels of silver. If you destroyed someone's house, you rebuilt it and paid in silver. The entire legal system depended on this metal. But here's the crucial point. Silver was not just money. It was political power. Whoever controlled the silver mines controlled trade. Whoever controlled trade controlled cities, armies, kings. Silver bought loyalty, financed wars, built monuments. It was the invisible foundation of everything. And the more you look at history, the more you notice a frightening pattern. Civilizations prosper when they have silver. They collapse when they lose it. Fast forward a few centuries. Athens, ancient Greece. The Laurium mines, located just a few kilometers from the city, were one of the largest sources of silver in the ancient world. And it was this silver that transformed Athens into the dominant power of the Mediterranean. With silver, Athens built an unbeatable naval fleet. With silver, it financed the war against the Persians. With silver, it created democracy. Yes, democracy itself was born financed by silver. The Athenian coin, the tetradrachm, bore the image of an owl and became so trustworthy that it circulated throughout the known world. Merchants in distant places accepted tetradrachms without question because they knew exactly how much silver was in them. It was not a promise. It was a physical fact. The Owl of Athens was synonymous with trust, and trust is everything. But then came Rome, and Rome, like every empire that grows too fast, made the fatal mistake. It began to play with money. In the beginning, the Roman denarius was a pure silver coin, weighing about 4 grams. Soldiers were paid in denarii. Taxes were paid in denarii. The entire empire functioned on the basis of this solid, predictable currency. But running an empire is expensive. Wars are expensive. Corruption is expensive. And at some point, the emperors realized something tempting. If you control the mint, you can cheat. Debasement began slowly, reducing the silver content a little, mixing it with copper or other cheaper metals. At first, no one noticed. But over time, the denarius that was once 95% silver dropped to 90%, then 80%, then 50%. By the 3rd century, the coin that supported the greatest empire in the world contained less than 5% silver. It was basically painted copper. And what happened? Exactly what always happens when you manipulate money. Collapse. The Roman population was not stupid. They realized the new coins were worth less. So they began to hoard the old coins of pure silver and spend only the debased ones. This created a destructive cycle. Good money disappeared from circulation. Bad money flooded the market. Prices exploded. Inflation ran out of control. Trust evaporated. This phenomenon would be called, centuries later, Gresham's Law. Bad money drives out good money. And here's the part that should scare you. Rome did not fall because it was invaded. It fell because it destroyed its own money. Monetary collapse came before political collapse. When currency loses value, soldiers do not receive real pay and stop fighting. Farmers stop planting. Merchants stop trading. Society implodes from the inside out. And all because someone thought they could print, or in this case, mint, wealth out of nothing. This is the brutal lesson that history teaches repeatedly, but that no one wants to learn. You cannot cheat reality. Silver is silver. Its weight, its purity, its scarcity are physical facts. You can lie about paper. You can lie about numbers on a screen, but you cannot lie about metal. And when societies try, they pay the price in blood, chaos, and ruin. If you're finding this story fascinating and want to understand how all of this connects to the money you use today, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And leave in the comments which city or country you're watching from. I want to know where the people are who still care about understanding how money really works. But the story does not end with Rome. In fact, it was only just beginning, because after the collapse of the Roman Empire, silver re-emerges with full force in an unexpected place, the Islamic world. And this time, it will create the first truly international monetary system in history. While Europe was sinking into what we call the Dark Ages, the Islamic world was living its golden age. And at the center of this cultural, scientific, and economic revolution was a coin that would change the game, the dirham. Minted in pure silver, highly standardized, the dirham was not just money. It was a statement of principles, a physical guarantee that value was something concrete, measurable, immutable. The dirham circulated from the Middle East to the Iberian Peninsula, crossed deserts, sailed across seas, and even reached the hands of Viking traders in northern Europe. Archaeologists have found hordes of dirhams buried in Scandinavia, physical evidence that this Islamic monetary system was more reliable and widely accepted than any European currency of the time. While fragmented Christian kingdoms minted inconsistent coins, the dirham reigned supreme. But here is something few people realize. Monetary systems are never neutral. They are political tools. And in medieval Europe, kings and emperors understood this truth perfectly. Controlling the supply of silver meant controlling the entire economy. It meant the power to collect taxes, finance armies, build cathedrals, and subjugate enemies. So a silent race began. Whoever secured the silver mines would dominate the continent. Major silver discoveries in Bohemia, Saxony, and Tyrol transformed entire regions. Cities sprang up around mines. Wars were fought for control of them, and rulers realized they could deliberately manipulate the amount of silver in circulation to stimulate or contract the economy. It wasn't science. It was raw instinct for power. But it worked. Then came the event that would change everything: the discovery of the Americas. Christopher Columbus did not know it, but when he crossed the Atlantic in 1492, he was about to unleash the greatest monetary revolution in history. Because the Americas were not just a new continent. They were a gigantic silver mine waiting to be exploited. Potosi, that name alone should make you stop and pay attention. Located in what is now Bolivia, the mountain of Potosi contained silver deposits so vast they seemed infinite. For centuries, the Spanish extracted millions of tons of silver from it. Millions. Silver flowed from Potosi to Spain, from Spain to the rest of Europe, from Europe to Asia, creating for the first time in history a truly global economic system. And at the heart of this system was a coin you have probably heard of, even if you didn't know it: the Spanish real of 8, also known as the peso de ocho, or Spanish dollar. This silver coin, standardized and reliable, circulated around the entire world for nearly 400 years. It was accepted in China, India, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas. It was the first truly global currency. And here is a detail that will surprise you. The American dollar is a direct descendant of the Spanish real of 8. The very symbol itself, the famous dollar sign, comes from the Pillars of Hercules stamped on Spanish coins. When the United States became independent and needed to create its own currency, they did not invent anything new. They simply copied the Spanish silver standard that already dominated global trade. But this seemingly perfect system carried a ticking time bomb, because all that silver coming from the Americas created something unexpected: massive inflation in Europe. Suddenly, there was too much silver. Prices soared. The relative value of silver fell. And the Spanish, who control the mines, discovered bitterly that wealth is not just about having resources. It is about having scarce resources. When you flood the market with something, that something loses value. This phenomenon became known as the price revolution, and it exposed an uncomfortable truth. Even real money, money made of precious metal, can be manipulated through quantity. There is no need to debase the coin like the Romans did. Just produce too much. The result is the same: loss of purchasing power, growing inequality, social upheaval. But the real conspiracy was still to come, because in the 19th century, something extraordinary happened, something that forever changed humanity's relationship with money. And it was not accidental. It was deliberate, calculated, orchestrated by powerful interests that understood one thing: whoever controls the money controls everything. And to control money, they first had to take silver out of your hands. This year should be engraved in your mind as a turning point in the history of money. In the United States, Congress passed a law that seemed technical, bureaucratic, boring. They called it the Coinage Act. But farmers, workers, and debtors who saw their lives destroyed in the years that followed had another name for it: the crime of 1873. What this law did was simple and devastating. It removed silver from the American monetary system. Suddenly, only gold served as the backing for money. Silver, which had circulated freely for centuries, was demonetized, banned, transformed from money into a mere commodity. And this was no accident. It was a deliberate political decision that benefited a few at the expense of millions. Understand what happened. When you remove half of a country's monetary backing, you violently contract the money supply. Less money circulating means deflation. Prices fall, and deflation sounds good, right? Wrong. Deflation crushes debtors. Because if you took out a loan when wheat was worth 10 monetary units per sack, and now it is worth 5, you need to produce twice as much to pay the same debt. It is a deadly trap. American farmers were destroyed. Small producers lost their land. Entire families collapsed financially. Meanwhile, bankers and large creditors profited enormously because they had lent money that was now worth more. The debt you owed grew in real terms, even though the numbers stayed the same. It was legalized theft. The revolt was immediate and furious. An entire political movement emerged demanding the return of silver, the populist movement. They understood perfectly that the issue was not technical. It was about power, about who controls money and therefore controls everything. The debate culminated in the presidential election of 1896, when William Jennings Bryan delivered one of the most famous speeches in American history. Bryan thundered against the financial elite that wanted to crucify America on a cross of gold. He passionately defended bimetallism, the use of both gold and silver as monetary backing. And he almost won. But he did not. The bankers' money spoke louder. The gold standard triumphed, and silver was definitively expelled from the system. But the story does not end there, because gold was also a problem for those who wanted to control money. Gold is finite. You cannot simply print more gold. So, throughout the 20th century, governments began to get rid of even the gold standard. First by partially unlinking currencies, then completely. The final blow came on August 15th, 1971. American President Richard Nixon announced to the world that the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. The Bretton Woods Agreement, which since 1944 had guaranteed convertibility between the dollar and gold, was torn up. And for the first time in history, the world's dominant currency had absolutely no physical backing. It was just paper, just a promise, just trust. This inaugurated the era of pure fiat money. Money that exists because governments say it exists. Money that can be created infinitely, without limit, without apparent consequence. And economists celebrated. Finally, they said, we are free from the chains of barbarous metal. We can manage the economy scientifically. We can print whatever is necessary to prevent crises. But 5,000 years of history scream the opposite. Every time human beings have tried to separate money from physical reality, the result has been the same. Inflation, collapse, chaos. Rome tried. It failed. Spain tried. It failed. Dozens of empires tried. All of them failed. And now, we are trying again. Only this time, on a global scale. Today, central banks print trillions in digital currency at the push of a button. Your purchasing power evaporates silently while you sleep. Silver, which for millennia was real money, is now treated as just another industrial commodity. Used in electronics, solar panels, technology. Valuable, yes, but forgotten as money. And this was no accident. It was exactly the plan. So what happens now? We live in a world where money is no longer real, where trillions can be created instantly with a few clicks on central bank computers, where your savings lose value every day without you noticing, where the entire system depends on a single fragile thing, collective trust. And history teaches us, repeatedly, that this trust always breaks. Silver today is treated as an industrial commodity, essential for technology, solar panels, electronics, medicine. Its industrial demand only keeps growing, but very few people see it as money. This amnesia is not accidental. It was cultivated, taught, reinforced by decades of financial education that tells you to trust banks, governments, abstract systems you do not control. But here's the brutal truth no one wants to admit. No fiat monetary system in history has survived. None. Zero. Roman currency collapsed. Chinese paper money of the Yuan dynasty collapsed. The French assignat collapsed. The German Weimar mark collapsed. Every experiment with unbacked money ended in hyperinflation, chaos, or a forced reinvention of the system. And the dollar, the euro, all modern currencies, they have existed for decades, not centuries. They are babies in historical terms, and they already show signs of strain, rising inflation, unpayable debts, uncontrolled money printing. The current system is not the end of history. It is just another chapter, and every chapter ends. So why does silver matter? Because it represents something that transcends politics, ideology, and technology, physical reality. You can hold a piece of silver. You can weigh it. You can verify its purity. It does not disappear if a government falls. It does not evaporate if a bank collapses. It is not erased if the internet goes down. It is tangible. It is real. It is yours. 5,000 years of human history validate this. Empires rose and fell. Technologies were born and died. Religions dominated and disappeared. But silver remained. It crossed millennia, preserving value, facilitating trade, preserving wealth. Not because someone decided it should, but because it is scarce, durable, divisible, verifiable. Because it works. The lesson history screams is clear. Monetary systems are human agreements, and human agreements can be broken, manipulated, destroyed. Fiat money only works as long as people trust it, and trust is the most fragile thing that exists. It can evaporate overnight. It already has dozens of times throughout history. It will evaporate again. You do not need to believe in conspiracy theories to understand this. You just need to look at the facts. You just need to study history. You just need to realize that every time human beings try to separate money from physical reality, they paid the price. And that price was always high. Devastating inflation, explosive inequality, social collapse. The question is not if the current system will collapse. It is when. And when that happens, what will remain? Digital numbers on servers? Promises from indebted governments? Or something tangible? Something that has held value for 5 millennia? Something you can hold in your hand? Silver is not a magic solution. It will not solve all economic problems. But it offers something fiat money never can. Physical certainty. You know exactly what you have. No one can print more silver with a button. No one can devalue it by decree. It is what it is. And perhaps this is the most powerful message of all. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Numbers on a screen are promises. Silver is reality. Throughout all of human history, promises have been broken. Reality has remained. And when the next collapse comes, when trust evaporates, when abstract systems crumble, what will survive will be what has always survived. The tangible, the verifiable, the real. If this story made you think differently about money, if it made you question the system, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Because the more people understand how money really works, the harder it becomes to manipulate everyone. History is not destiny, but ignoring it is condemnation.